Thank you very much and good morning. What I'll do in the talk is just give you a bit of an idea of what we're doing at Griffith as far as research repositories, touch on a current project we've got about meeting DOIs, and also how we're addressing some of the legal issues and making research data available. So those who don't know Griffith, we're on South East Queensland. We've got 5 campuses. As far as research and repositories, the numbers of researchers, if we're including PhD students, we've got well over 2,500. If any of those have got, most of those will have data of some sort, so you're talking in excess that we've got out there, so at least 2,500 collections we have to deal with at some point, either us or somebody else. The other problem we have, or the other impact, is the cross-disciplinary research, and that makes it for interesting times around schema development when you're trying to build a collection that's shared by both health researchers and climate change researchers, so it gets quite interesting. And we also have a number of collections that are being developed for research groups where they want to build their own centre resource development. We're slightly different than a lot of universities. We don't actually have a library division, so we've got 3 divisions, 3 portfolios in the Information Services division. Most of the traditional library services operate out of the middle one, but we also manage all the research content and also the learning and teaching content. However, all the infrastructure is managed by the IT guys. So we're a centralised university in IT and also learning and teaching content and in library content. The drivers for us, really the thing that's most important in the research space is it's in a state of flux. So between new publishing paradigms, we've got things like open access coming through. We're also seeing changes in policy. A couple of weeks ago, the NMHRC, one of the largest research funding bodies in Australia, started to mandate that you have to preserve data in institutional repositories. So we're going to have compliance issues as well we have to deal with. And the research centres and researchers as well, but typically the research centres in the universities want to leverage the money and the effort they put into data so they can reuse it. The thing that makes us different from administrative repositories like SharePoint and learning and teaching systems is that most of our users cross boundaries. So most researchers, most research projects involve people external to the organisation, and not just other universities, but they could be government or even members of the public. The other problem we're dealing with is we're trying to seamlessly capture data and make it available at the other end. And then there's just the sheer scale of it coming through as well. I did put one of the learning and teaching content ones in there as well. And all that means we've got to support it at some point, so we're trying to grapple with how to do that. And the other one that we're facing at the moment, it's becoming apparent we've got to get our heads around pretty quickly, is the access, the terms of access to most of the data we've got, and how we actually comply, or more importantly, show that we comply with any access restrictions. And we want better analytics. So at Griffith, I'm not going to talk in this talk about the Blackboard and the learning and teaching side. I'm more focusing on the other side. It's a larger environment, or more complex environment, and I guess from want of a better term, we look at it as more of an ecosystem rather than a silo system. So the content management systems like EQUELLA, we haven't actually done too much with them in the last 12 to 18 months up at this level, mainly because that building blocks there, with certain things we'd like to see extra, but they're there and they're working. Where we've been focusing a lot of attention is more on the upper level, especially around the discovery side of it, and down on the bottom with the storage and the system identifiers and the delivery services, how we get some of this stuff out there. And I should point out that in research data, you're dealing with working data right through to preservation. So there's, at one end you've got curation issues, at the other end you're dealing with analysis tools and stuff like that. So talking about the discovery end, last 18 months we've been developing a product called Vivo, along with the University of Melbourne. Vivo comes out of Cornell in the States. They got about $15 million from NIH. They use it principally to share biomedical research data, and there's about 77 institutions using it there. In Australia, we've developed this and put it out on SourceForge, so any Australian university or institution for that matter can install. However, we've taken it further than just the base metadata aggregator and actually tried to use it as our whole discovery layer for all the content that's sitting in institutional repositories and administrative systems. And the dotted lines will have thesis going in as well this year. We know we can do some at any time for the library tools. We just want to fix up some of the data, and also on the cards this year is to pull in the citation data. And also, as of about 2 weeks ago, we minted our first DOIs using the ANS DOI service. We also, with ANS and Trove, do machine-to-machine identification of researchers to make sure we're all talking about the same person. So we feed data, we check on Trove when there's a new researcher, and we do feeds for them to update their, what it's called, People Australia, whatever the product is for researchers. And on the AND site, which I'll show you, the Research Data Australia, I'll just tell you what's in there later. Down at the bottom end, we're trying to uncouple storage from content management systems for a number of reasons. One is the sheer scale of some of the storage coming through. We want to leverage cloud services. In Queensland, there's a big higher education QCloud getting built for mostly for spreading on Australia, but the Queensland University is involved with that. So we want to leverage the storage that's there for us to use for research purposes. That also puts the pressure on things like persistent identifiers and those sorts of things, and how you actually move data around. So we're trying to uncouple the storage layer from the content management system. So the original diagram before about the framework we came up with about 2010, and then from that we looked at what were the core building blocks that we needed in that CMS layer, that middle layer, if we're going to go forward. And why we haven't done much with EQUELLA is because some of those building blocks have been missing, like the DRY services, so we've been concentrating on those. So some of this stuff we'll talk about, we made a list of the basic functions we think have to be there. For access control, we need access at the collection level right through to the object, and we need to be able to manage that either through the application or through the user's credentials. If you haven't heard of the AAF, the Australian Access Federation, so every Australian university now can use that to use their home. We can use their home credentials to log on. So they don't have to set up an account in every institution. They can just use their base home credentials. That's a different mechanism than LDAP or one of the other authentication methods. Then there's the DRM stuff we've got to deal with. The other one about the audit trails, we've got to be able to, some of our data we've got to be able to produce reports to the people who contributed to show that only these people have seen that data, say from coronial data or some very secret stuff we get from government departments. And then I think we've already covered last day or so about the different types of media we want to stream. Again, a lot of interest in the storage, a lot around the persistent identifiers and how we handle that, how we just a massive volume and the size of objects. Some of the runs of the lab equipment are 800 megabytes, so how we handle that, how we store it, where do we get the, how do we workflow them into a content management system. And the last one was just making sure we comply with any regulations related to the particular data we're dealing with. The other one about, if you think of it as an ecosystem, one thing that's key is export and import. We've got to have fairly loosely coupled ways of interacting with other systems. So it comes back to all the export and import methods we're using. And the other one we have to deal with is the ability to upload large numbers of files very rapidly. And also, if we have to bag files together in big blocks and upload them. Library of Congress has got one that's called Bag It and Tag It, so they just let researchers put a very minimal bit of metadata and just move a big zip file almost up. Because we can't, just to deal with the volume and the quantity of records. Oh, I should just point out the other one with the upload is we also want the ability to interrupt that and do some transcoding. So if it's coming off a machine or someone's got a whole lot of JPEGs but we want to archive it in a different format, even traditional PDFs, if we want to store it in PDF/A, the archive format, we've got to have some method of actually transcoding those as we're uploading rather than make it part of the process rather than a separate exercise. Again, a lot of reporting and making stuff available in the various search engines like Google Scholar. And then there's just some other grab bags of tools that are always changing. The citation stuff's interesting. Green open access, yesterday someone mentioned the ability to generate emails to the owners of content. That would work for green open access publishing, but it would also work for research data where the researchers don't want to give the data until someone asks for it to say why they want it. And we also need systems that we can extend. So when we looked at our first shot at making some of the data available, and it was pretty benign data, but we thought, well, maybe we better guard against some of the unintended use. It looked pretty benign, but you know, who knows down the track. But the more we got into looking at end user agreements, we realised that it's actually got to start from the other end and about what the agreement was under which you actually collected it in the first place. So you can't do an end user agreement without having a good understanding of where you've got the data from. And when I say we're only the custodians, we're not the owners. So when you look at content providers, in some places we do this in written agreements, in other cases it's just a series of questions. But the sorts of things we need to know is anything to do with the Privacy Act, underage, 18 years, has a bearing, any restrictions, any other rules that they know about, they need to tell us because that will determine how we're going to make it available. Then there's some of the DRM stuff. We also want them to make sure the content provider know that we're not liable as to how it's going to be used. Because a lot of these researchers are getting data from someone else as well. So it's a flow-on effect. We want them to make sure that either party can remove the data at any point or turn it off from public. We need to understand what our termination rights are. We also, where possible, like to keep the ability to annotate or add to the data. So down the track we might want to add feedback or comments about the quality of the data or whatever's up there. For those of you who don't know about moral rights, if you talk to our legal officer, all I got was a headache, but basically it comes out of the creative arts where someone's created a film, a drama about or a documentary about a certain topic that they had in mind when they created it. If someone takes that and makes a parody of it or a satire or misuses it for other purposes, the owner or the creator still has the moral rights. So the person who did that is in breach of their moral rights. So for the creative arts, this is very important. So we have to make sure who's actually putting the data up has got clearance around moral rights as to how they use that data. And quite often in the creative arts, you've got to get a signature on that. This grab bag here is basically to say it's not our fault. So we're telling the content, the person who's actually giving us the data, whatever happens with it, don't blame us. And it's making very sure that we're making sure all the risk is on their side. So it's up to them to make sure they're not breaching IP or they're not some of the data is legally collected and that sort of thing. We also want to make sure the content provider aware that where there's a middleman is identified if someone sues us for some particular problem with the data. Our responsibility really is maintaining the integrity of the data and the use of it as licensed to do so, or as agreed to do so. That's as far as it extends. And even in some of the more formal cases, we have to make sure we've got, with the agreement, a true description of the data and some attachments on moral rights clearances and stuff like that. So when you get around the user's side, you reflect what you've actually got on the contributor side. So the first thing is that all end users must understand they've got to acknowledge the rights of the owner. So, you know, cite it properly. We may want to impose other usage restrictions on particular data. Again, we're letting the end users know if there's data there that it's only suitable for over 18-year-olds. We've got to be able to deal with that. Sometimes there's fees involved. And we also reserve the right to up-to-date material. So if the content owner gives us a new data set to replace the existing one, we'll just update it. And again, it's the liability stuff saying that's the end user's problem, don't blame us, you're getting it as is. So it's pretty straightforward. We do have a situation where we've got some collections where a whole institution wants to have root access to it. So it's not public, but there's a third-party institution. And the way we deal with this is to get into an agreement with the institution with the same end-user liabilities and warranties. But what we do is use their employee-employer relationship. So we basically say our agreement's with you, it's up to you to make sure your employees behave. So that reduces the problem of having a multitude of users to worry about. We can just worry about the group. This is something we got signed off by our legal officer. That's really a very basic access agreement. The only thing you'll note there is under 1, our legal officer took a great interest in making sure we weren't breaching privacy. That's what those A, B and C is about. So they're very risk averse when it comes to the Privacy Act. But really that's for a fairly basic agreement. And if we had writing down notes, if we had a tool where we could pop an endnote citation, that's where that would go. So you say, if you're looking at this data, here's how you cite it. Now the problem is we've had end users and content providers, but now we're talking about cloud users. They have their own terms and agreements around how they're hosting this stuff. And we haven't got into this space, but the ones we have looked at, like Amazon as a hosting service, you have to make sure you've got a third party in the room, and you have to make sure that what's written in there isn't at odds with any agreement you've got between the end user and the content providers. So there's a bit of a twist coming through there we have to deal with. So skipping that one and getting into DOIs. DOIs, there's about 55 million objects registered. It came out of the publishing industry, have got DOIs. We're using DataCite. DataCite's they mint DOIs for data. There's about 1 million data sets have got DOIs at the moment. ANZ use DataCite, so we're using the ANZ service to mint our DOIs. I think everybody should be reasonably familiar with DOIs. The goal of a DOI really for us is about citation. There's no other purpose of doing it. So it's really about trying to use it for citation and measuring impact. And that's our goal behind it all. But really where we want to get to and what we're doing at the moment with ANZ, we've been able to mint the DOIs. We're just getting into the bit about citations and working out how we can measure citations of data that's got a DOI. But really, in some process issues here, you want the researchers to mint the DOI, then write the article, put the DOI in. Relatively speaking, it's not a technical problem, it's reasonably easy to do. It comes more around governance and management. You've got to make a decision on what you're going to mint a DOI for. There's a number of persistent identifiers you can use. Some are better for other purposes, and depending on what you want to use them. So at Griffith, for instance, we're not going to admit a DOI for anything that's not public. we don't see the point, so we'll use a handle or some other persistent identifier. So you've got to get that clear in your institution about which persistent identifier you're using for what and how you use it. There's also the granularity. We want to mint DOIs for a collection, for a record, or for an object, depending on what the purpose is. So there's that as well, and of course that flows through to things like EQUELLA as well. You actually store that. In our case, for a lot of our collections, we use the landing page for the collection as the resolving point, because that page gives context to what's in the data. And I should say right this now, when I talk about research data, we use the term research in the broadest sense. That includes creative arts output, and data isn't just a CSV file. It includes everything you need to use that data in 20 years' time. So you need any methods, project description, why you did it, anything that goes with that data to make that meaningful. And quite often it's the publication that gives some of that meaning. We also, there's a problem about version. So if someone changes, upgrades the data, do you mint another DOI? Do you use the same one? Given that most research projects cross institutions, 2 institutions got the same data, which one mints the DOI? And then there's long-term support issues. There's 2 ways to do it. You can get the researcher to mint their own or request some sort of workflow to get one minted. The other way is to say, we're the custodian of the data. If you put it here, we'll mint, as part of the curation process, we'll mint the DOI. So, if this works. So, before I talked about the research hub as a discovery layer, publications at the moment are coming out of DSpace, but thesis will be in there from EQUELLA. The collections are coming out of EQUELLA. This particular DOI, this is the landing page for the languages corpus. And it looks like that. The DOI is actually registered in there. If you go to this link, with a bit of luck, that's the collection for the corpus. At the moment we've got the DOI in the description. Now, back on the should tell you something other bit too. So we're integrated with delivering a lot of this collection information to Research Data Australia. Research Data Australia use a standard called RIF-CS, which is based on ISO 2146, which is it comes out of the library space about sharing collection information. So there's certain metadata they want about collections. In EQUELLA we couldn't put it in the collection itself, so we've actually created a collection of collections, so like a registry if you like. So this information, which is another collection of collections, contains the full description of the about the collection itself. That's the handle to the actual collection of objects. The bottom collection there, the handle is to a published paper explaining what the whole collection is. So all this, when we export information to Research Data Australia, it's coming from this collection of collections. And I should have. So in Research Data Australia, So in Research Data Australia, which is actually a registry of all the research data collections in Australia, what you'll see reflected in there is the information that came out of our EQUELLA database, so it's harvesting directly into that. At the moment, for the collection description about the corpus, it's still got the EQUELLA link. That'll be replaced by a DOI in the next iteration. And for some reason, that doesn't want to display. Try that. There we go. Now they've only been running this probably for the last 12 to 18 months. They've got a fairly strict QA process that's still manual, so we're getting to the point where we've got to come up with a machine-to-machine process. So it's machine-to-machine to get it there, and then it goes into their sandpit for a QA check on the data quality. So over here we've got the EQUELLA link, but that'll get back to the DOI. That should point to our research hub, but the URL is still the old one. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. I took a couple of snapshots just in case I didn't know. So that particular data and that collection is publicly available. It's just transcripts and audio of people talking, the linguists use. That data also is going to the Australian National Corpus system as well. So it's getting harvested for their particular corpus group to do analysis on, and they do the system, actually we built it for them, harvests all the corpus collections in Australia that are registered. We had to go through a lot of work on standards. So you can go in there and do an analysis or look for keywords to see which collections, as a collection of collections where the word's used. So researchers can go and have a look at particular collections to do some further analysis. So what's next for us? A lot more in the DOIs and PID services and getting our heads around that and actually implementing it fully. We're going to do some stuff on tracking citations. We're just looking for a couple of guinea pigs to actually publish an article with one of our mentor DOIs. We're going to scale up our research data storage service now that we've got storage coming on the stream. We've got to do some more around the record quality and the crosslinks. So at the moment, most of our crosslinks, we're relying on the person as the connector because they come out of silo administration systems. It's usually the staff ID we've got to connect. What we'd love to do is when we're collecting research data, for instance, is to give the researcher a list of all their publications and projects and say which ones does this data relate to. So then we can get a much richer crosslink. And the other one is just continually working on the seamless integration with external services, whether it's cloud services, other systems, just moving data around and metadata around. Any questions? Let's go next. The only lesson we looking at the research space is because it's so turbulent. If you're hoping to do a requirement specification build it, it's not going to happen. One, the researchers aren't all ready, the institutions aren't ready, and the environment keeps changing. The legal environment keeps changing. So really, you've just got to make a start somehow and get your head around the whole process. We've had more trouble with the systems, with the data and the policies than we have with the actual data itself. So, for instance, in our discovery layer, we wanted to publish publications, but then that got into a whole many committee discussions about what papers do they want to publish on the system, what do they want to make searchable, because the university's got fairly strong views on what's quality. They're looking at the Herdic type publications. Researchers and research groups tend to take a broader view if they're doing some of the grey literature stuff and the creative art stuff. It's not Herdic material. We also wanted to list researchers, so the university had a great discussion about what's a researcher and what's an active researcher. And then we have to systemise whatever their policy decision is. So, and I have to say some of that takes months, just trying to get through some of those problems. So typically it's not technical problems that you deal with.
Actually, I have a question. You talked a little bit about it earlier, things like data access and control policies, where are you responsible for them, or are you just operating on an agreement where the people who are accessing the data are saying they're responsible? Given the move to the cloud, and it's no longer just Australia, it's international. You know, even within Australia, of course, every state has a different policy. America, there's probably 50, 100. Is that something that you have to worry about?
Yeah, for a couple of reasons. One is the custodians have got to have an understanding of what that is. But our university, for instance, the internet security guys with the audit are very interested in our cloud services. So we've had a couple of instances where researchers want to host an application on Amazon, and they want to see the agreement before they'll allow it. So as part of the ethics process, ethics clearance, there's a questionnaire about security and access. I'll pass that on to the internet guys, the internet security guys to have a look at, who then have to report it back to the university security committee as to what the risks are if it's a bad one. So we can't say it's not our problem. And quite often the reality is we're supposed to be the experts and the researchers aren't. So, you know, about infrastructure, if you like, and hosting. Most researchers just want to do research. They don't want to get into reading legal agreements on what a cloud service does. So the answer to that is we have to be involved in some way, at some point, at some level.
All right, if there's no other questions, thank you very much. Malcolm.